December 31st, 1942, a remote Pacific island. The sun had barely begun its climb over jagged coral ridges when the distant hum of engines cut through the tropical stillness. Japanese sentries froze mid-step, their eyes narrowing at the growing shadow above. At first it was just a blur, a mere disturbance in the blue expanse. Then slowly, the silhouettes of twin-engine bombers emerged. Low, deliberate, and unnervingly precise. The soldiers instinctively reached for cover, but there was nowhere to hide. The aircraft swooped in close, strafing positions with a terrifying combination of speed and firepower that seemed almost unnatural. Each bomber carried a weight beyond its bombs, a psychological force that left seasoned troops shaken before a single shot landed. This was not just another raid. This was an arrival that would etch itself into the memory of every man on that island. It would later earn a name whispered with both fear and respect: the B-25 Mitchell, America's flying artillery. Unlike the soaring bombers that rained destruction from high above, the B-25 could dive, strafe, and turn a battlefield into a landscape of chaos with surgical precision. Its reputation did not come from size or speed alone. It came from adaptability. Guns could be added, removed, and repositioned. Bombs could be carried, and crews could operate in ways that turned conventional expectations upside down. On the ground, it was as if the air itself had become a weapon. The question that haunted Japanese soldiers, and indeed, American planners who observed early operations, was simple. Why did this aircraft inspire such dread when dozens of others shared the skies? The answer lay not in raw horsepower or technological novelty, but in the marriage of innovation and audacity. The B-25 was a platform reimagined for multiple roles, from medium-level bombing to low-altitude strafing runs. Its twin Wright R-2600 engines allowed it to carry heavy payloads, yet maneuver with an agility that made it deadly in ways conventional bombers were not. But the legend of the B-25 went deeper than metrics or manuals. It became a symbol of psychological warfare, a machine that disrupted the enemy before any ordnance was dropped. Soldiers reported feelings of dread at its approach, a preemptive strike against morale. This aircraft could appear from seemingly nowhere, deliver destruction, and vanish again, leaving confusion and fear in its wake. Yet, even with its fearsome reputation, one question lingered: what truly set the B-25 apart from the dozens of aircraft that filled the skies of World War II? Why did Japanese troops, veterans of countless battles, describe it as a predator that seemed to hunt the very air itself? The answer would reveal not only engineering genius but a philosophy of warfare. Sometimes, the most potent weapon is not the one you see coming, but the one the enemy cannot anticipate. As the B-25 streaked across the horizon, the sentries on that sun-baked island could only stare, powerless. And somewhere high above, the pilots who would become legends were just beginning to understand the shadow they had cast, a shadow that would haunt the Pacific for years to come. Across the vast training fields and hangars of the U.S. Army Air Corps, military planners wrestled with a problem that would define the coming decade: how to dominate the skies with speed, power, and precision. The world was watching, tensions in Europe and Asia simmering, and America faced a stark realization: its arsenal of bombers was aging, limited, and ill-prepared for a war that seemed inevitable. What the Army needed was a new kind of aircraft, a medium bomber that could strike deep, carry substantial payloads, and adapt to missions that no single plane had ever attempted before. Enter North American Aviation, a small but ambitious company in the heart of Los Angeles. Their engineers, often young and brimming with audacity, believed they could meet and exceed the Army's expectations. At the time the idea was audacious, even risky. The Army had received dozens of designs, each promising speed or range, but none could combine the versatility required for both high-altitude bombing and low-level assaults. North American's team bet everything on a new concept: a twin-engine bomber with rugged construction, superior maneuverability, and the flexibility to be modified for multiple combat roles. The design that emerged was a radical departure from the conventional. Twin Wright R-2600 engines promised power and reliability, while the fuselage was built to absorb punishment that would ground lesser aircraft. It could carry a substantial bomb load, but also be equipped with forward-firing guns for strafing, defensive turrets, and specialized equipment tailored for reconnaissance or anti-ship missions. Engineers referred to it as a jack of all trades, but in a military world obsessed with specialization, that versatility sparked skepticism. Could one plane truly excel at both high-altitude precision bombing and the brutal chaos of low-level attacks? Many doubted it, yet North American persisted. Each prototype was pushed to the limits in wind tunnels and test flights. Pilots described a strange combination. The B-25 could feel heavy and solid in one moment, yet respond to controls with surprising agility the next. Its fuselage could withstand hits that would have shredded other medium bombers. Its range allowed it to reach distant islands, far behind enemy lines, giving American commanders a tool that few adversaries could counter. By the summer of 1941, the first production models rolled off the assembly line, but the gamble was far from over. On paper, the B-25 was impressive. In theory, it promised unprecedented flexibility and durability. In practice, it had yet to face the chaos of real combat, where engines could fail, bullets could pierce armor, and the margin for error vanished entirely. Planners and engineers watched anxiously, knowing that the aircraft's true measure would come not in tests or diagrams, but in the eyes of pilots and the experience of war itself. The early skepticism persisted in Washington. Some military brass questioned whether a medium bomber could survive low-level attacks against well-entrenched targets. Others worried that modifications, adding extra guns, changing bomb loads, might compromise its stability. And yet there was an undercurrent of excitement. This aircraft, if it lived up to its promise, could redefine what medium bombers were capable of, giving the United States a psychological edge over enemies who had yet to comprehend its potential. The B-25 was promising on paper, but paper could not tell the full story. Its true destiny would be written in fire and courage, above the remote islands of the Pacific and the skies over Asia. The first trial by fire would push the aircraft, and the men who flew it, beyond imagination, turning a gamble into legend. April 18, 1942. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly, a mirror of calm concealing the storm of war. Less than 5 months had passed since Pearl Harbor, and America was still reeling from the shock of sudden devastation. Confidence was shaken, and morale hung by a thread. Commanders knew that a bold, daring action was needed, not just to strike back, but to send a message to a stunned nation and a calculating enemy. The answer came in the form of a plan that defied convention: launch medium bombers from an aircraft carrier. It was audacious. Historically, only small, lightweight aircraft had operated from carriers. The B-25 Mitchell, sturdy and heavy, had never attempted such a feat. Lieutenant Colonel James "Jimmy" Doolittle, a man renowned for his ingenuity and fearless determination, was tasked with making the impossible possible. Pilots trained relentlessly, learning how to take off in record distance, carry full bomb loads, and navigate over enemy territory without support. The stakes were staggering. Failure would mean certain death for the crews and strategic disaster for America. On the morning of April 18th, the USS Hornet crept through the misty Pacific, carrying 16 B-25s that seemed too large, too fragile, too improbable for the mission ahead. Then came the moment of truth. One by one, the bombers roared to life, engines screaming as they launched from the deck into the open sky. For the men on board, it was a leap into the unknown, a flight that blurred the line between audacity and recklessness. Yet the B-25 performed flawlessly. Its twin engines held firm. Its frame absorbed the sudden strain. Against every doubt, the aircraft proved it could adapt to conditions no one had thought possible. The bombers crossed hundreds of miles of open water and crept toward the heart of Japan. Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya. The cities lay ahead, unaware of the shadow approaching from above. Then, in a thunder of calculated chaos, the B-25s descended, bombs falling with precision, their engines thundering like war drums. Fires ignited, buildings shattered, and the once untouchable heart of the Japanese homeland felt a sudden terrifying vulnerability. From above, the raid was brief, but its impact was immeasurable. For Japanese civilians and military leaders, the psychological shock was profound. The attack shattered the illusion of invulnerability, a terrifying reminder that the war was not confined to distant islands. Meanwhile, back in America, news of the raid ignited a surge of pride and hope. Ordinary citizens still mourning Pearl Harbor could scarcely believe that their country had struck back. The B-25, a medium bomber previously unknown to the public, became a symbol of American ingenuity, courage, and audacity. The raid also proved something crucial. The B-25 could do more than drop bombs from altitude. It could be launched from unconventional platforms, navigate long distances over water, and survive in conditions far from ideal. Its versatility was no longer theoretical. It was battle-tested. Pilots learned that the aircraft could take punishment, carry heavier loads than imagined, and still return crews home, sometimes under harrowing circumstances. Yet even as the headlines celebrated Doolittle and his men, the raid hinted at a deeper truth. The Pacific Islands, scattered like stepping stones across a vast ocean, would become the true crucible for the B-25. Here, in the thick jungles and coral atolls, Japanese soldiers would face the full fury of its guns and bombs. The raid was only the opening act. The real legend, the one whispered with fear across the Pacific, was just beginning to take shape. As the smoke from Tokyo drifted into the sky, American commanders realized something profound. This was more than a raid. It was proof that innovation, courage, and a single versatile aircraft could rewrite the rules of engagement. And somewhere beyond the horizon, in the hidden islands where battles were yet to come, the B-25 was preparing to etch its name into history, not just as a bomber, but as a shadow in the sky that no enemy would soon forget. The Pacific Islands were a world apart, a place where the rules of warfare had to be rewritten. Towering palms and dense jungle canopy hid enemy positions like nature itself conspired to protect them. Coral cliffs and volcanic ridges created natural fortifications, while Japanese garrisons were scattered across tiny atolls and expansive islands, often impossible to map with precision. For American forces, the challenge was immense. Conventional high-altitude bombing offered little more than a distant, imprecise hammer, its impact often lost in the green chaos below. From thousands of feet in the air, the enemy appeared almost invisible. Soldiers dug into the undergrowth, reinforced bunkers blended into the terrain, and supply lines wove through narrow trails that conventional bombing could not reliably reach. American commanders realized that the war here would not be fought like the skies over Europe, where open landscapes allowed for sweeping raids and carpet bombing. The Pacific demanded precision, flexibility, and a new kind of aerial strategy. Enter the B-25 Mitchell. It was no longer just a medium bomber. It was an instrument of adaptability. Engineers and pilots discovered that its twin engines and robust airframe allowed it to fly low and fast over jungle terrain, delivering ordnance with pinpoint accuracy. Its guns, once considered auxiliary, became lethal tools for strafing runs, tearing through hidden bunkers, machine gun nests, and supply caches. The B-25's fuselage, designed to withstand punishment at higher altitudes, allowed it to shrug off small arms fire from below, giving crews a confidence that conventional bombers could not offer. In this environment, the psychological impact of the B-25 became as important as its physical one. Japanese troops, who had long considered themselves secure in the dense jungles of their island outposts, began to speak of an invisible predator that appeared from nowhere, strafing with terrifying speed and vanishing before it could be fully engaged. Morale eroded not just from bombs, but from the constant dread of a low-flying shadow whose arrival could not be predicted, and whose firepower seemed inescapable. Pilots adapted the aircraft in the field, adding extra forward-firing guns, experimenting with strafing techniques, and even adjusting bomb loads for low-altitude runs. Each modification amplified the plane's lethality, turning it into a weapon that the designers at North American Aviation could scarcely have imagined. The B-25 became more than a bomber. It was a platform for innovation in real time, shaped by the harsh realities of jungle warfare and the ingenuity of the crews who flew it. High-level bombing could no longer dominate the battlefield. The jungle demanded a new calculus: speed, surprise, precision, and adaptability. The B-25 filled that gap, proving itself in an environment where most aircraft struggled, transforming the very nature of aerial engagement in the Pacific. And yet, this was only the beginning. American engineers and crews, pushed by necessity and emboldened by early successes, would continue to modify the B-25 into something even more formidable, something that would strike fear into enemy troops across the Pacific. The Mitchell was evolving from a versatile medium bomber into a weapon of terror, a machine whose presence alone could unnerve even the most hardened soldiers. In the dense shadows of the jungle, amidst the roar of engines and the flash of gunfire, the B-25 was becoming a predator uniquely suited to its environment. And as the island campaigns intensified, the next stage of its evolution would cement its legend in ways no blueprint or manual could predict. The jungles, Atolls and scattered islands of the Pacific had revealed the B-25's potential, but American pilots and engineers knew the aircraft could do more. The question was no longer about reliability or range. It was about turning the Mitchell into an instrument of sheer, terrifying firepower. Somewhere between necessity and audacity, the idea emerged. What if the bomber could become a flying artillery platform, a predator capable of delivering more than bombs? A storm of lead that could hunt, suppress, and destroy with unprecedented precision? The first experiments began with bold modifications. Engineers removed the bomber's glass nose, replacing it with a solid section bristling with multiple .50 caliber machine guns. These guns, once defensive in nature, now became offensive weapons, allowing pilots to sweep enemy positions with a hail of bullets before dropping a single bomb. The transformation was radical. No longer was the B-25 merely a medium bomber. It had become a gunship in the skies, a flying battery capable of unleashing devastation on land, sea, and jungle. By 1944, this evolution had given birth to the B-25H and B-25J variants. These models carried up to 14 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns, alongside conventional bombs. Imagine the cockpit. Pilots peering over a reinforced nose, engines roaring, guns ready, strafing lines of enemy soldiers, bunkers, and even small ships with terrifying precision. Each mission tested not just the aircraft's durability, but the nerves of the men inside, and the fear of those on the receiving end. Tales of these missions became legend. On one small island, Japanese soldiers reported being strafed by what seemed like an airborne wall of steel, unable to identify the source of such concentrated fire. Supply convoys, once thought secure under jungle cover or narrow coastal routes, were shattered by B-25s executing low-level attacks with clockwork accuracy. On the water, small ships and barges burned under a relentless storm of bullets, leaving crews scrambling for survival. For the Japanese, these were not mere planes. They were monsters of the sky, instruments of a war they had not anticipated. Even the most hardened veterans recounted the psychological effect. Soldiers described an almost surreal horror: the approaching roar of engines, the unmistakable flash of multiple barrels, and the sudden indiscriminate fury of the Mitchell's guns. Entire units hesitated, surrendering the advantage of surprise to an enemy they could no longer easily confront. The B-25 had achieved a dual victory: physical destruction and psychological dominance, a combination that elevated it above conventional aircraft in the Pacific theater. And yet, for all this innovation, American engineers were not finished. Just when it seemed the B-25 had reached its apex, an airborne gun battery capable of obliterating targets with terrifying accuracy, a new idea emerged, one so audacious many considered it insane. The Mitchell, already a versatile bomber and lethal gunship, would soon carry a weapon that defied convention, pushing its destructive capability into uncharted territory. In the minds of pilots, engineers, and commanders alike, the question was no longer whether the B-25 could dominate, it was how far its dominance could extend. The Pacific had already witnessed the terror of flying artillery, but the next step would redefine what a single aircraft could bring to the battlefield. A weapon once laughed at would soon rewrite the rules of aerial warfare and cement the B-25's place in history, not just as a bomber or a gunship, but as a machine that transformed the very nature of combat. The Pacific theater was a place of constant innovation, where necessity demanded audacity, and audacity demanded invention. The B-25 Mitchell had already proven itself as a medium bomber and a strafing gunship. But American engineers and pilots wondered, could it carry something even more formidable? The answer came in the form of an idea so bold it seemed almost reckless: fitting a 75mm tank cannon into an aircraft. The concept was staggering: a cannon designed to obliterate armored targets on the ground, now mounted on a plane, capable of delivering devastating firepower from the air. Yet the technical challenges were immense. Recoil threatened to tear the aircraft apart, while reload speed required precise coordination among crew members operating under extreme stress. Weight distribution and flight balance had to be recalculated, and engineers faced the constant risk of compromising the plane's already proven performance. Many skeptics called it impossible. Many others called it insane, and yet the B-25 adapted. In the hands of skilled pilots and crews, the Mitchell cannon became a tool of both destruction and intimidation. Early missions revealed the challenges. The plane recoiled violently, making precise aiming difficult, and reloads were slow, leaving crews exposed to enemy fire. But when it hit, the effect was undeniable. Enemy positions, bunkers, and even small vessels were shredded by the explosive shells, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The psychological impact on Japanese troops was immediate. Few had seen an aircraft carry a weapon of such destructive power, and the shock alone often caused retreats or hesitation in the heat of battle. The 75mm cannon transformed the B-25 from a gunship into a literal, flying artillery platform. For the first time, the phrase was no metaphor. From the air, crews could deliver the concentrated firepower of a land-based artillery unit, striking targets that had previously been considered safe from aerial attack. The image of the B-25 swooping low, cannon blazing, became etched into the collective memory of the Pacific conflict. Yet for all its firepower, the true lesson of the 75mm cannon experiment was not just about destruction. It was about resilience and adaptability, qualities embedded in the B-25 itself. The aircraft could be modified, pushed beyond its original specifications, and still perform under extreme conditions. Its airframe absorbed punishment, its engines carried heavier loads, and its design allowed innovation that no other medium bomber could match. The cannon was spectacular, but it was also a testament to the Mitchell's underlying strength. As the Pacific campaigns raged on, the B-25's firepower would continue to evolve. Pilots and engineers would discover that the greatest weapon was not only what the plane carried, but what it represented, a machine that could adapt, endure, and strike fear into the enemy in ways no blueprint or manual could predict. 1945. Across the Pacific, a quiet legend was taking shape, not just in the roar of engines or the flash of machine guns, but in the resilience of the machine itself. Pilots and crews began to speak in hushed reverence about the B-25 Mitchell, the plane that wouldn't die. Stories circulated of aircraft returning from missions with engines smoking, fuselages riddled with bullet holes, and control surfaces barely functioning. Yet somehow, against impossible odds, they made it home. One crew recounted a B-25 hit by Japanese anti-aircraft fire over a small island garrison. The tail section was torn, the hydraulics shot, and the left engine sputtered and died. Still, the plane limped back to its base, guided by a pilot who refused to abandon it. Another account told of a Mitchell that had been patched together in the field, wires exposed and metal buckled, flying dozens of additional missions despite the obvious danger. In the jungles and coral atolls of the Pacific, the B-25's toughness became as important as its firepower. For crews, this durability was more than statistics. It was a lifeline. Men who trusted the aircraft knew that it could absorb punishment, respond to improvisation, and carry them home when all hope seemed lost. In combat, that confidence transformed into bold action. Pilots would press low-level attacks under heavy fire, strafe enemy positions with precision, and push their aircraft to limits that would have grounded lesser planes. The B-25 inspired a rare combination of fear in the enemy and trust among its own. Japanese defenders, for their part, were often left frustrated and mystified. Anti-aircraft guns, carefully emplaced to guard strategic points, frequently failed to bring the Mitchells down. Soldiers reported seeing planes emerge from smoke and explosions, riddled with holes, engines failing but still flying, still fighting. The effect was demoralizing. The B-25 was not merely a bomber or a gunship. It became a symbol of invincibility, a force that no amount of ground fire seemed capable of stopping. Its resilience extended beyond battle damage. The Mitchell could operate in conditions that grounded other aircraft: tropical storms, salt-laden air, and improvised airstrips on islands barely large enough to hold them. Crews learned to improvise, to repair in the field, and to trust that their plane could withstand extraordinary punishment. In many ways, the B-25's toughness mirrored the resolve of the men who flew it, creating a bond between pilot and machine that few other aircraft could inspire. Yet the Pacific campaign was only part of the story. Beyond individual battles and isolated islands, the B-25 became a critical component of America's broader strategy of air power. Its durability meant that it could project force across vast distances, survive conditions that would stop others, and adapt to missions no other plane could undertake. The Mitchell had earned a reputation not only as a fighter of the skies, but as a cornerstone of the United States' emerging global air dominance. The question looming over every mission remained: how much further could this machine be pushed? Pilots, engineers, and commanders had already witnessed remarkable feats of endurance. Yet the B-25 still had untapped potential that would soon shape the very strategy of America's air campaigns, across the Pacific and beyond. While the Pacific became the proving ground for the B-25 Mitchell's lethal low-level attacks, the aircraft's reach extended far beyond the islands of the Pacific. From the deserts of North Africa to the mountains of Italy, the Mitchell carved its presence into theaters that demanded adaptability, resilience, and innovation. In the scorching sands and winding passes, B-25 crews learned to strike with precision, navigating harsh terrain where conventional bombers often faltered. Its ability to carry heavy bomb loads over long distances while maintaining agility made it invaluable for disrupting enemy supply lines, rail networks, and fortified positions. Under the Lend-Lease program, the Soviet Union also took the B-25 into service. In the vast expanses of the Eastern Front, where miles of open ground tested the endurance of every aircraft, the Mitchell proved itself reliable, durable, and flexible. Soviet pilots adapted it for their own missions, integrating it into attacks on entrenched positions, industrial targets, and transport hubs. The aircraft's versatility allowed it to function in climates and battle conditions the designers in California could scarcely have imagined. In China, American and Chinese crews employed the B-25 against Japanese supply lines that stretched through dense terrain and remote river valleys. Its combination of speed, armament, and accuracy allowed it to strike with devastating effect against convoys and infrastructure, supporting guerrilla forces and disrupting enemy logistics. Each mission reinforced the Mitchell's reputation as an aircraft that could excel in multiple roles, from bombing and strafing to psychological dominance of enemy troops. Across continents, the B-25's global service showcased a rare balance. A machine capable of strategic strikes and tactical precision. A platform that could adapt to deserts, mountains, jungles, and rivers with equal effectiveness. Its reliability and range made it one of the most versatile aircraft of the war, earning trust from commanders and crews alike. Yet despite these achievements, the theater where the Mitchell became a legend, the place where its name was whispered with both awe and fear, remained the Pacific. Even as B-25s roared over the Mediterranean, strafed convoys in China, and supported Soviet operations, the shadow it cast over the Pacific Islands loomed larger. There, in the dense jungles and across coral atolls, Japanese soldiers faced not just bombs or bullets, but the relentless psychological weight of an enemy they could neither predict nor escape. The Mitchell's global service proved its capability, but its greatest mark, its terrifying, unforgettable impact, was written in the fear it instilled across the Pacific theater. And so, while its engines carried it across oceans and continents, and its guns shattered defenses from multiple theaters, the B-25's legacy was not just in its missions or kills. It was in the dread, the anticipation, and the respect that the enemy came to feel every time a twin-engine silhouette appeared on the horizon. On the remote islands of the Pacific, Japanese soldiers endured a relentless and invisible threat. From the dense jungle canopy, hidden bunkers, and scattered outposts, they watched the skies with growing dread. Their testimonies, recorded after the war, reveal a shared fear unlike any they had experienced before. Low-level strafing runs by the B-25 Mitchell were not just attacks, they were moments of sheer terror, a combination of speed, firepower, and unpredictability that left troops paralyzed before a single shot hit. Eyewitness accounts describe the same haunting images. A plane appearing suddenly over the treetops, engines roaring, guns flashing, and a wall of .50 caliber bullets sweeping across positions. Soldiers spoke of the overwhelming noise, the sudden destruction, and the feeling that the aircraft itself was hunting them. It was as if the very sky had turned into a weapon, a predator they could neither outmaneuver nor anticipate. In letters and diaries, they referred to the Mitchell as flying artillery, a name that captured not just its firepower but the psychological weight it carried. The terror was more than anecdotal. It shaped Japanese defensive strategy and morale. Units became hesitant, supply routes slowed, and entrenched positions were abandoned, not solely from physical destruction, but from fear of being caught under the relentless, precise assault of the Mitchell. In many cases, the anticipation of the B-25's appearance caused more disruption than the attack itself. Commanders struggled to maintain order, as troops grappled with the unrelenting stress of facing a foe that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with surgical efficiency, and vanish just as suddenly. From the American perspective, the B-25 represented far more than a medium bomber or a modified gunship. It was a symbol of industrial might and tactical innovation, a testament to what American manufacturing, ingenuity, and strategic thinking could achieve. Its presence alone served as a reminder that the United States could project power across vast distances, disrupt supply lines, and instill fear in an enemy who believed themselves secure in isolation. The combination of firepower, versatility, and psychological dominance made it one of the most effective instruments of both war and morale in the Pacific. As the B-25 racked up missions and claims, Japanese forces began to see a larger pattern. No isolated garrison was truly safe, and even the most fortified positions could be swept away by a determined air assault. The aircraft's ability to combine bombing, strafing, and surprise attacks eroded resistance slowly but steadily. Soldiers learned to fear the sky above them as much as the forces on the ground. A profound shift in the calculus of warfare that demonstrated the unique power of American air strategy. Yet even as the B-25's shadow stretched across the Pacific, a question lingered in the minds of American crews and commanders alike. As the war drew to a close, what would become of this aircraft? The bomber that terrified Japanese soldiers, astonished its crews, and redefined the very nature of aerial warfare. Would it fade into history as another tool of a specific conflict? Or would its legacy endure, shaping the future of military aviation and the lessons of adaptability, ingenuity, and psychological power? The answer, as history would reveal, lay not only in the skies of the Pacific, but in the enduring influence of a plane that had become more than metal and engines. It had become legend. The guns fell silent across the Pacific. Smoke lifted from the islands, and the jungles, once scorched by fire and bullets, began to heal. Yet the story of the B-25 Mitchell was far from over. With the war's end, these twin-engine marvels transitioned from instruments of destruction to symbols of ingenuity, resilience, and American innovation. They moved from combat zones into training fields, teaching new generations of pilots the principles of flight, precision, and adaptability that had defined their wartime service. Some B-25s found new roles in civilian life, adapted for cargo transport, aerial mapping, and firefighting. Others became stars of the silver screen, reenacting daring missions and showcasing their versatility for audiences who could scarcely imagine the terror they had once inspired. Air shows across the United States welcomed the roar of their engines, the sleek lines of their fuselage, and the unmistakable silhouette of a plane that had shaped the outcome of battles thousands of miles away. In these post-war years, the Mitchell became not just a plane, but a bridge between history and memory, a tangible link to the courage of the men who had flown it and the fear it had struck in enemies. Veterans who had flown or faced the B-25 remembered it vividly. For American crews, it was a trusted companion, resilient enough to survive incredible damage and versatile enough to adapt to any mission. For Japanese soldiers, it had been a specter in the sky, an embodiment of unstoppable industrial and tactical power. Museums and restoration groups today preserve surviving examples, meticulously maintaining the aircraft so that new generations can see, hear, and feel what it was like to experience the flying artillery in motion. Each restored plane tells a story not just of technology, but of strategy, courage, and the human ingenuity that made it possible. The legacy of the B-25 Mitchell is larger than the sum of its parts. It symbolizes adaptability, the ability of men and machines to evolve under pressure, to turn constraints into advantages. It embodies psychological warfare, demonstrating that a plane can wield fear as effectively as any weapon. And it reflects the ingenuity of American industry, the power of innovation combined with determination to solve impossible problems. The B-25 didn't merely drop bombs. It redefined what it meant for an aircraft to fight on the battlefield, blending versatility, resilience, and tactical creativity in ways that would influence air power for decades to come. Even today, when those engines roar to life at an air show, when the twin propellers cut through the sky and the fuselage gleams under the sun, the echo of history reverberates. Spectators feel the presence of a machine that changed the course of war, instilled fear, inspired loyalty, and transformed the very idea of what an aircraft could achieve. The shadow it cast across the Pacific is long gone, but its imprint remains, a testament to courage, innovation, and the indomitable spirit of those who built, flew, and fought alongside it. The B-25 Mitchell may have left the battlefields behind, but its legend endures. In every dive, every roar of engines, and every flash of gunfire at demonstrations and reenactments, the spirit of the flying artillery lives on, reminding us that innovation, courage, and adaptability are timeless weapons in any fight. And in the skies above, decades later, the B-25 continues to soar. Not just as an aircraft, but as an enduring symbol of American ingenuity and the legacy of those who dared to imagine the impossible.